Hi everyone, this is Raquel from scrapcosy, and today I'm going to show you how I created this card, which I made for my grandpa on his birthday a few days ago. You can grab a tea now or some popcorn, because today's video is a bit long. I'll show you many things: how to create your own autumn leaves and the shiny acorn, how to create your own gold ink for your calligraphy, and how to incorporate real leaves into your project to achieve a more realistic look. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to start by preparing the background for my autumn leaves, and then I'll stamp them on top with some Tim Holtz stamps. So the first step is applying infusions. In this case, I'm selecting the greens and the yellows that I have from the palette, which are Golden Sands, Limoncello, Emerald Isle, the Sage, and a bit Jaded. So those will be my main colors for this first background. As you may know, infusions has a walnut component that if you let it react with water for a long time, you get a brownish color out of it. And this is what I wanted. So with the help of a brush, I'm helping the walnut to kind of pop up. So then I'm getting those brownish colors, which is what I want for autumn leaves. And I'm adding a bit more of yellow and green on those two portions. And then with a piece of paper, I'm just removing the excess of water, and I'm adding some texture as well. Now I'm moving to the next background. On this one I will be adding a red, in this case Sunset Beach, and then again the same greens and yellows on all over the paper, and afterwards I will spritz with water and play around with it. Don't be afraid of putting too much water. As you see here, I'm using a lot, but that's the good thing of it, that you can keep on playing and playing until you get the actual result that you want. You can keep on drying with a piece of paper, extending with a brush, applying more water again, more pigment, until you actually get the pattern that you want. The background was starting to look like pointed, but I still needed a bit of little green dots here and there, so I applied a little bit more of those on top of it, more water, and then finally with more water and the paper I achieved the actual look that I wanted. And of course now it's time to remove the water, because you want to work on the paper, and it was pretty damp. It really took me a while to dry everything out, but I just cut it because it's better to move on. So now it's time for stamping, and I will be applying those stamps by Tim Holtz with Versamark ink on my surface. First I start with the oak leaf, and for the next background I'll use the birch leaf. I really love the stamps by Tim Holtz that belong to the Blueprint series. These are one of them, of course, and they have these little details like the title of what is the actual object and the quotations with the arrows and etc., which makes it very special and very nice. In this case though, I will be removing those quotations and those arrows, because I'm actually cutting out the leaves for another purpose, which is to actually get my own leaves. So now it's time for cutting, and because I have many leaves and very short time, I prefer to cut it out for the video, and then we'll move on to the next interesting step. So now it's time to make these leaves more realistic, and for that I'm going to apply some Distress Ink Vintage Photo on the borders with a sponge dauber. That will bring the leaves like a extra volume, and it will make them look a bit more real. Next step is to create the maple leaf, and for that I'm going to use metallic gilding polish paint, which is this metallic paint in chocolate in this case, and I'm just applying directly into the paper, and as you see the paper suddenly becomes copper color. Now with Versamark ink I'm stamping the leaves, and I will set those aside because the metallic gilding polish paint makes the surfaces non-porous, so then it will take a while for the ink to dry. the next step is to prepare the acorn, and for that I will be using a stamp of an acorn from the same set, stamp it with Versamark ink, and then with some watercolor pencils I will color it. I'm not a specialist in coloring techniques or anything, but I will just use common sense. So I'm grabbing here 3 brown colors, one very dark, another one medium tone, and another one pretty light. And I'm just applying the darker one to the outside areas and wherever I think that the shadow should be. And then I apply the lighter colors to the areas which should have the highlights. I'm not covering the entire surface with just straight lines. I'm just trying to kind of give the shape of the actual acorn. So kind of give a little bit of round shapes on the downside and keep on working on adding more layers and layers of the pencils until I get a saturated color and that covers everything. And I don't know what was happening at this point, but the pencils were attacking my hand all the time, falling on top of me. Well, I know what happens actually. The table is crooked. But anyway, I didn't spend the time to fix that at this point in time because I was obviously engaged on painting the acorn, and that was far more interesting. Once I'm happy with the design and how it looks and how realistic look it is, so once I think it's done, I'll move on to the next stage, which was actually trying to dry out those leaves because after all that time spent, the ink was still wet. So instead of trying to dry it, I decided to do a different story. I decided to take advantage and do an embossing, because as you know, embossing powder will stick to anything that it's wet. And then you can apply that heat with a heat tool and then fix it to that surface. And that's what I was doing. And I decided to use copper color. Then for the acorn, I wanted to use perfect pearls with perfect medium. So then my first step was adding the perfect medium on top, so the perfect pearls would add on top of it. But then when I was doing that, I just realized that the watercolor pencils were being activated and they become more real and more shiny. And I thought it was a pity to just cover everything with perfect pearls. So I decided to apply clear embossing on top instead. And that's what I'm doing here. And as you see, the finish gets shiny and kind of like a varnish. So like actual corns are very shiny, right? So I cut my acorn and the 2 leaves, and I'm just applying a little bit of distress ink to age them. Although metallic gilding polish paint is non-porous, it will still accept the distress ink, which will eventually dry and become permanent. So you can actually change the color of the paint that you have bought to a different color by applying different inks. So now that I have all the embellishments that I want and they are ready, I'm just playing around a little bit with the design. I only had clear that I wanted to have like a middle piece in the center where I would put my sentiment and the leaves would be around. And this time I'm hand lettering the sentiment that you see on the screen with some gold ink that I will be doing myself. You just need 3 ingredients. First, you're going to need 1 part of Arabic gum. Then you're going to need 4 parts of Pearl-X pigments. At this point I was a bit scared because these pigments are very expensive and 4 parts of it's a lot. But well, I give it a chance and it looked okay. And then final ingredient is distilled water until your desired consistency. And then you need to whisk and whisk and whisk until everything is melted down. And this was a bit tricky because it was Arabic gum and it was very solid. It took me a while. But then once everything is ready, then you're ready to write the sentiment. In my case, it's Felicidades Yayo, which means congratulations, Granddad, because as I said, this card is from my granddad. My grandpa doesn't have internet and he doesn't speak English, so obviously he will not be watching this video. However, I'm sure that he will be watching the Spanish version, which I always publish at the same time as the English one, and he will be sitting, I'm sure, at my parents' place in front of the computer watching it and probably crying. My granddad cries a lot and so do I, so I guess I got it from him. One day I should make a video with him being the star guest. He would show us how to do baskets and racks out of natural fibers. He's an artist. Okay, sentiment is almost done, so then let's move on to the next phase, which is putting everything together. So then once I have a design that I like, I take a picture with the mobile, and then I move on to sticking all those embellishments. I'm starting with the top corner, and I'm putting there both the maple leaves, and then the acorn will be on top. And then I just remembered that I'm not using the mobile phone, and that will be very helpful. So I'll just put it on top of my table with the picture showing all the time, so then I can make sure that I stick all the leaves on the place that it should be, so then I get the design as close to the one that I wanted before. And if you see, I'm not putting glue in the entire surface of each leaf, and that's because I want the leaves that are already a bit crumbled and curved to remain like that, because then they will add a bit of volume to the card. Now I'm trying to stick a real leaf, and as you see, it doesn't stick. And this is because the Mod Podge is not reacting very well with it. It needs a little bit more time. So what I'm doing is just applying the Mod Podge on top of all the real leaves and set them aside. So then I leave a little bit of time for the glue to dry a little bit, and that will make it a bit more sticky, and it will be possible to stick them afterwards. So I carry on with the design only with the paper leaves, and once I finish with them, then I'll come back to the real leaves and maybe add a little bit more of glue if necessary, or in some cases the glue that we already set, it's enough to stick them in place. By the way, one of the reasons why I got inspired to do that postcard is not only because it's autumn time, but also because there is a challenge in PaperArtsy blog, which is about autumn leaves. And when I saw the theme, I just knew that I wanted to do this for my granda. Now I'll be trimming all the leaves that exist from the paper, but then I decided that the acorn, I wanted it completely full, so I decided to remove it first, and stick it. And by doing that, I just damaged a little bit those leaves. So by adding a bit of paint on top, I'm just covering them, and then I will be cutting the focal point. And to do that, it's better that you turn the paper the other side, so then you can see the real straight line, and then you cut that excess. And afterwards you will be ready to cut with any trimming method that you want. In this case, I will be using the paper trimmer by Tim Holtz, which is awesome, an awesome product too. So I'm using that piece of paper, which is my template, and it's the perfect size for the card base that I just prepared before. You haven't seen it yet. And I'm making sure that I cut the edges that are whiter. In that way it will seem that the card is surrounded by leaves. And after trimming those two sides, I decided that the bottom part was also too white, so then I decided to make my card smaller. So I trimmed a little bit out of it as well, just by eyeballing it. Now we come to the final steps. So now I'm decorating the acorn with a little bit of lace. So I'm doing there a bow. It's like a yellow gold lace that I'm using. And then I will stick it in place again with Mod Podge. And now I'll adjust my card base to the new size of the focal point, which is a bit smaller of what I thought in the first place it would be. It's just very simple. I do a mark with a pencil and then I just cut it with a trimmer. And then, because I wanted to pop out, I'm just painting with a sponge dabber the borders with ground espresso distress ink, so then it becomes darker. And then I will stick all in place with the ATG gun. And as you see, I apply the glue to the card base, not to the leaves, because they are a bit fragile, so I don't want them to destroy. And well, that's it. This is the card for today. I hope you like it. Here there are some pictures from the details of the card, so you can see how the leaves stand out a little bit with volume. And here you can also see that the paper leaves are disguised with the original ones, the real leaves. And here you can also see how the ink looks like, which seems that it's a bit embossed and it's shiny. And this is all for today. I hope you like it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!